Hi, 7th grade. Welcome to our first remote writing lesson connected to the unit we started right before we had to start learning from home, where we started talking about elevating our writing about reading with a goal to write companion books for a book or a series of books that we love. So here's our third lesson in how we're going to continue to think about improving our own writing about reading. Before we get too far, what I want you to make sure is that you have everything you need. So you're going to need your reader's notebook, okay? If you want to type your writing about reading pages from now on, please create a folder on Google Drive designated for all of this unit. You'll need a writing utensil. And then also make sure that you have pulled up the student writing about reading examples, which are attached to this assignment on Google Classroom. We viewed them in class. I attached them to this assignment. We're going to be looking at those in a moment, so just make sure that you have those handy, that you'll be able to pause this and then go and look at them. I want to make sure also at some point today that you create a comment on this assignment on Classroom and list the book title that you plan to use for your companion book. I want to make sure that each of you has your book picked out. So you guys know a lot about the writing process, and you're not going to be surprised probably when I tell you that I want you to do a writerly thing today, and that's to open up your reader's notebook. And I want you to just get your reader's notebook out and look at some of the writing about reading that you have done. The most powerful thing about writing is this, I think. Usually when one thinks or talks, our words, our ideas, they kind of float away. But when we write, we pin those words, those thoughts onto the page. We pin them down. They don't float away. We can put them in our pocket. We can take them out later. We can set them in the center of the table and pull in close to think about those ideas. We can take the best of our thinking and amplify it. And we can take the worst of it and think, what's not working? And start that part again. It's pretty amazing, really. You know, by thinking about our thinking, we can actually make it better. So what I want you to do right now is look through your reader's notebooks and find your recent thinking and jotting about reading. Put your finger on a part you like, and then reread what you wrote, thinking, did I do my best work here? Okay, go ahead, do that. Now think about how you could revise even that part that you think is pretty good, if you wanted to do so. What could you do to make it even better? So today, I want to remind you that to make anything your best writing or your best thinking, you need to pause to think what's working and how can I make my best better. It helps to have a picture in mind of what you're trying to do. And in this instance, it helps to have a picture in mind of what makes up, what constitutes interesting, vitally alive writing about reading. Writing about reading can be pretty boring, which I think many of you feel, but it doesn't need to be. So what makes it interesting? What makes it vitally alive? So before we do anything else, I want you to go back to your reader's notebook and your own writing, and I want you to actually also look at those samples that we looked at in class that are attached to this assignment on Classroom. And I want you to think about what works in both those samples and in your own writing. What are the things that you see that you think, oh, that's really interesting, or I really like that idea. That works really well. Because we're going to start to try to gather some helpful tools and tips for what makes this type of writing effective. One of the things that I think we can all agree on that helps make writing powerful when we're writing about reading is to make sure we record important details, right? Quotes, settings, symbolic objects, specifics. Right now I want you to point to 3 places in that entry, an entry of yours, whatever the one is that you thought was pretty good, And I want you to see where you have included some very concrete, specific details right from the text. So try to find 3 places in your entry. If your details aren't as specific as they could be, what could the detail be? What would you have needed to add on to make it more specific? If your entry is about the stolen party, your detail might include that Rosara didn't just tell her mother to be quiet, but she yelled at her saying, "Shut up." You might even quote the text when it said Rosara didn't approve of the way her mother spoke, right? Those are important, specific details, and they vividly reveal Rosara's feelings about her mom, the central tension, and other elements that are important to the story. So, yes, when we want to write powerfully about reading, we absolutely must think about and record specific details. But here's the other thing. Were any of you also thinking, but to write well about reading, you also need to think about big ideas, right? Absolutely. Absolutely. What are some of the big ideas that you or the writer that you were studying those examples wrote about? Look on the page and see. If you were thinking about big ideas having to do with the stolen party, you might think about this idea that, well, in this story, really, it's about Rosara growing up. And sometimes growing up means learning the world's meaner than you thought, that things don't always end up being exactly how you wanted them to be, that sometimes people really disappoint you. Another big idea maybe in the stolen party is that sometimes parents, they just want to protect their kids, right? Rosara is angry at her mom, but sometimes parents just want to protect their kids. That's a big idea that's in that story, and that's something that's also worth writing about when we're writing about reading. So we can't just write the details when we're writing about reading, when we're trying to make it really strong, and we can't just focus on big ideas. You need both. And so what some people who talk about reading and reading theory, they've come up with this idea of the ladder of abstraction, where there are 2 kind of ends to the ladder, right? So there's this upper part where we have our big ideas, things like themes, messages, universal kind of ideas that the text teaches us about, big questions about life, theories, overarching theories about characters, and these tend to be across many parts of the text. And then on the bottom part of the ladder is where you have those details. So quotes, specific images or descriptions, names or places and characters, objects that seem important, and those tend to connect to really one small part of the text. But you need both. If you just have details, then you're going to be missing some of those bigger messages, some of those bigger ideas that the text teaches us about life, and you're not going to be thinking about the whole text. But if you just have big ideas, then you're not going to have quotes and specific images that support the big ideas, that help to develop and build the big ideas. So it's really about a balance of both. That's really essential when you're trying to do really great writing about reading. So I've added to our anchor chart the second idea today now. We really want to, yes, record important details, but we also need to explore big ideas and themes that tend to be linked to those details, right? Both of these things need to happen in order to write powerfully about reading. So I want you to ask yourself, how are you going to improve your writing about reading? Do you tend to write more at the top of the ladder or more at the bottom of the ladder? More details or more big ideas? And your task today is to pick 1 or 2 goals for your writing about reading that you're going to work on. And in your notebook, I want you to turn to a new page. You're going to write your goals at the top, along with today's date, or at the top of a Google Doc if that's what you're using. Okay? Then you're going to create a new notebook page. Ideally, this should be about the book you will use for your companion book, but it could be about the stolen party if you want to. Okay, create a new notebook page and then turn it into Google Classroom. It's not just a same old notebook page. How are you going to make it better? How are you going to improve your writing about reading? What are you going to do to make this page better than any other page you've had in your notebook? I look forward to reading them.